Barefoot on her first day, the incredible act by a billionaire that revealed hidden possibilities. Emily Larson's anxious heart raced the moment she stepped into the Newington and Smith law firm, the slick marble floors amplifying the sound of her sneakers against perfectly polished tiles. The lobby buzzed with the sharp tones of executives in designer suits, pervasive confidence in the air like a heady perfume. Standing in front of that glass wall, she felt like an imposter. She could practically hear whispers. Who's that girl? Just a small-town nobody. Her mother's sacrifices loomed over her like a heavy cloak, stifling her aspirations. Yet today was her first day. She wouldn't give the judgment any more power. Navigating the corridors lined with prestigious awards and portraits, a wave of unease gripped Emily. Would they see her as nothing more than a charity case, an intern with nothing but ambition? "You're smart," she whispered to herself, "you can do this." But the words felt shaky, a fragile shield against the doubts piercing through her resolve. A fleeting encounter with a passing associate echoed in her mind, eyes narrowing, lips curling in a smirk. Did they know how it felt to be underestimated, the weight of dreams tangled with one's background? Just as she steeled herself to blend into the background, she was jolted by the arrival of Thomas Wells. Eyes widened, her breath hitched. The billionaire was a household name, but more than that, he had risen from nothing, a rags to riches fairy tale that felt almost fictional. And now he was here in the flesh, striding through the lobby with an ease that ballooned the tension in the room. Then, quite unexpectedly, he turned and invited her to spend the day with him, suggesting they walk barefoot through the town. "Let us shed these expectations," he said, in a voice that held both authority and warmth. In that moment, uncertainty flashed through her mind. What did he see in her? Should I? The overwhelming prospect of walking outside the confines of the firm with someone who embodied privilege and success spun her emotions into chaos. She felt the weight of judgment shift. Should she dare reveal herself, flaws and all? Or would he expect her to conform, embrace a facade crafted of ambition buried in compromise? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each step with Thomas revealed more than the quaint charm of the local shops. His laughter only highlighted the vast difference between his life and the one she led in worn, familiar places. Emily found herself captivated, yet a gnawing doubt lingered. Could a girl molded by financial struggle really be worthy of his attention? The firm still beckoned with its glittering promises. How attracted was she to success? By aligning herself with him, would she risk losing the essence of where she came from? Back at the firm, as the atmosphere grew thick with whispered critiques, Emily stood at a precipice. She felt raw and exposed, vulnerable under the gaze of those who dismissed her. The fear of insignificance clawed at her insides. The impending presentation loomed large. Could she bend to their judgment or would she defy it? Standing alongside her ambitious colleagues felt both exhilarating and crushing. An invisible storm brewed within as she grappled with a choice: bow to the ambition that seemed so alluring yet hollow, or stoke the quiet flames of her integrity and fight back. The moment she overheard a dismissive conversation about her contributions, her heart sank. It was as if breaking news blasted through her reality. The stakes were real. Emily's mind raced, breath uneven, body tense. Was there a way to honor her mother's sacrifices and still carve out her own place in this world of untouchable privilege? Would she rise defiantly or retreat back into the shadows? The air was thick with uncertainty as she braced herself to define not just her career, but her very identity. The weight of decision hung heavy, leaving an unsettling question sizzling in the silence: which path would she choose? The sun hung high, casting warm shadows across the polished interior of Newington and Smith. Emily's mind swirled from the morning's unexpected encounter, wrestling with the weight of her choice. She had a few hours until the meeting where she would present her research. As she prepared her notes, she felt the sea of pressure rising beneath her skin, the doubts rekindling into a blaze of uncertainty. Flipping through her presentation, the words blended into a blur. Every highlighted point echoed her insights, yet the premonition of scrutiny loomed. Would they still consider her contributions worthy? The condescending remarks replayed incessantly. Ignoring them was no longer an option. It was as if fear and determination were battling for dominance within her. Taking a deep breath, Emily decided to engage with her colleagues. Casually, yet with intent, she approached a small group huddled around the coffee machine. As if sensing her presence, they paused, trading glances with that familiar mix of amusement and judgment. "Hey, mind if I join you?" she ventured, trying to project an air of confidence, feeling every limb tremble. "Sure, as long as you're not taking notes for the next working paper," one of them quipped, and laughter rippled through the group. Instead of recoiling, a spark ignited inside her. Why not take it head on? "Actually, I'm hoping to contribute something meaningful in today's meeting," she stated, her voice firmer than she felt. "I might surprise you." The comment hung in the air, and for a heartbeat, they regarded her, eyes wide with disbelief, before dismissing her like a fleeting thought. Anger surged inside her. How dare they reduce her to a sidelined intern? Stepping away, she felt adrenaline pumping, igniting the latent embers of her ambition. Emily had been silently observing how her colleagues navigated the firm. Their confidence was not built on superiority but rather an unyielding belief in their abilities. Today, she would challenge the narrative that dictated her worth. Time slipped away as the meeting approached. Each tick of the clock felt like an impending verdict. She made her way to the presentation room, each step tethered to a resolve she hadn't fully acknowledged before. The room came into view, her colleagues already settled, their laughter echoing off the walls, but it was the one who had mocked her the most who caught her attention: Eric, with his folded arms and casual indifference. As she entered, silence washed over the group, but confusion followed shortly. Emily opened her folder, her notes now smudge-free and organized, her fingers tapping on the table with growing determination. "If I may have everyone's attention." With each word, she dismantled the barriers that had kept her shackled. Her research unfolded before them, interlaced with poignant insights into the market trends they had overlooked. As she spoke, her confidence trickled into her presentation, swooping up her colleagues' initial skepticism and transforming the mood. Eyes shifted from mockery to intrigue, and for the first time, she felt seen, her contributions validated. With her heart racing, she moved into the final summary, her words like a storm, powerful, undeniable. In conclusion, she declared, locking eyes with Eric, "This data isn't just numbers, it represents opportunity, and opportunity we can capitalize on. But it requires every single one of us to recognize that value." As she sat down, a crackle of murmurs filled the room. She couldn't decipher what they thought now, but she could sense a shift, their perceptions beginning to unravel. Suddenly, the door swung open, and Thomas Wells stood in the doorway. His presence silenced the room instantly, a palpable excitement filling the air. "I just caught wind of this discussion," he said, his eyes scanning the room before resting on Emily. The weight in his gaze set her heart racing anew. "I'd like to hear more about your findings, Emily." All eyes turned to her, and a wave of disbelief washed over the group that had once overlooked her. There she stood, amidst the contrasting currents of judgment and validation, an undeniable force now demanding recognition. But amidst her triumph, a flicker of self-doubt danced at the edges. Was it possible she was merely riding the coattails of his reputation? The complexity of acceptance intertwined with her need for independence. The applause faded into a cocktail of uncertainty and hope. What depths had she yet to uncover within herself? In her newfound determination, darkness lingered, hinting at the challenges that lay ahead. She could sense that the journey ahead would not be easy, but the inevitable question twisted in her mind like a knife: which part of her would define her next steps? As her heart beat fiercely, she realized the moment of truth was approaching. Would this be the catalyst she needed, or merely a reprieve before the next wave of self-doubt crashed over her? The murmurs faded, leaving a charged silence in the air as Emily gathered herself, her heart racing like a trapped bird. Thomas's unexpected interest left her spinning. she was acutely aware of the eyes on her, a mix of intrigue and skepticism layered under their surface. She had risen above their jeers, but was it enough to break the mold they decrafted for her? "Emily?" Thomas prompted, arching an eyebrow in expectation. "Right. My findings show that the current market trends reflect a significant shift in consumer behavior that we've largely overlooked." She paused, weighing her next words. The numbers had felt solid during her preparation, but now, they seemed fragile. Would they still resonate now? She delved into the data again, describing projections and implications, grounding her arguments in a context that felt confident and assertive. Every statistic she wielded felt like armor, protecting her from doubt while guiding her audience through uncharted territory. She was surprised by how much clarity emerged with each point articulated. But no victory was without its nemesis. Eric shifted, breaking the momentary silence with a question that held an edge. "So, you're advocating for a pivot based on preliminary findings? What is your plan for its execution, if I may ask?" The room held its breath. She hadn't expected such an immediate challenge. Her mind danced between strategy and self-preservation. What if he succeeded in reducing her insights to mere theory, unwarranted? This was her moment, and she could not let it crumble beneath Eric's dismissive tone. "With the right adjustments to our marketing strategy, we could achieve significant growth," she replied, feeling adrenaline surge. "It's about engagement that can resonate with our target demographic, aligning our messaging with their values. We would need to pivot quickly, but the rewards could be transformative." The faces in the room reflected a mix of appreciation and residual disbelief, but she noticed Thomas nodding along, an approving spark in his gaze. Could it be that her points were landing? "Interesting," Eric countered, pressing further. "But I still think it's a gamble." Emily's resolve hardened. Her breathing steadied, an inner storm turning into focus. "Every choice in this industry carries risk, Eric. But significant growth is born from calculated risk, not stagnation. If we don't adapt, we become irrelevant." The words hung in the air, laden with a newfound authority. Eric's brow furrowed, inciting a silent assessment that connected them in an unexpected duel. She could sense the shift as some colleagues leaned in, curiosity ignited. As the discussion unfolded, Emily felt a glimmer of something she hadn't dared to acknowledge before understanding. The views exchanged were no longer battles, they were conversations, sharing the realization that each person in that room contributed a depth of insight invaluable beyond her own worries. After some time, Thomas interjected again, redirecting the conversation towards the potential ramifications of her strategies. Emily's heart swelled. She was being invited deeper into the fold, her perspective sought after as if it had weight, as if she truly belonged. But once the meeting concluded, the remnants of doubt tugged at her again. Had she truly established credibility, or was this merely a momentary cloud of perception? Walking out of the room, Emily replayed snippets of the discussion, fixing on how the seeds of respect had been planted, albeit momentarily. "Great job today," a quietly spoken voice arrived beside her. It was Mia, one of her colleagues who often lingered on the edges of the group but had witnessed Emily's transformation. "You held your ground. Not many would have pushed back like you did." "Thanks," Emily replied, surprised at the warmth that flooded her. "It feels different now, but I can't shake this feeling." Mia's expression was soft, her eyes revealing an understanding that mirrored Emily's turmoil. "We're all just finding our way. That's the reality of teamwork." With those words, a flicker of hope ignited, mingling with lingering uncertainty. She contemplated her place further in the complex dynamics of Newington and Smith. She was now more than a curious intern, perhaps even a force to reckon with in her own right, yet shadows still hovered in her periphery. And then another question arose like an unwelcome specter. If she was beginning to earn her place, could she sustain it? What would she need to confront within herself to ensure her growth didn't stall? As she emerged into the sun-drenched street outside the building, Emily realized the real journey had only just begun. A series of choices lay before her, one that would stitch together the fabric of her professional identity. What would her next move be? Would she rise to face the forthcoming challenges or retreat into doubt? Only time would tell, but she knew she was ready to navigate the shifting landscape of her ambition, one calculated risk at a time. Yet, she also sensed looming tensions beneath the surface. Tomorrow would see Eric approach her again, perhaps seeking out a confrontation she could not evade. She felt a chill. It was time to face what lay ahead. The sun rose over the city, casting long shadows along the pavement as Emily made her way to the office. Determination filled her bones, but the anticipation of confrontation gnawed at her insides. What would this encounter entail? How could she present herself as a competent force when faced with Eric's probing skepticism? As she entered the building, she spotted Thomas at the reception area, engaged in conversation with another colleague. His posture was relaxed, yet she sensed a subtle intensity in his demeanor that stirred a wave of confidence within her. If Thomas believed in her, perhaps she should believe in herself too. She made her way through the office, greeted by familiar faces punctuated by polite nods and forced smiles. Each one felt like a reminder of her standing, but today, it felt different, worn yet resilient. The past week's challenges unfolded in her mind like a roadmap, each twisting turn led to new perspectives forming. The clock struck 9, and Emily settled at her desk, heart thrumming. Today was different. It was time to embrace the potential she had barely begun to realize. She opened her laptop and began to strategize her next moves. The marketing projections she had spoken about in the meeting flared brightly in her memory. Each bullet point bore not just data but implications to lead the shift of market adaptation. She had to embody constant growth herself. Fueled by resolve, Emily outlined plans for the team, focusing on deeper engagement tactics that would foster collaboration across departments. She composed a proposal that emphasized not only metrics but also values, turning cold statistics into relatable narratives that resonated with the team's collective ambition. After printing it, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was her voice, clear and assertive, echoing her newfound identity. Just then, she caught sight of Eric leaning against the glass partition, his gaze boring into her with an intensity that made her stomach twitch. "Emily, could you step into my office?" His tone was deceptively calm, but the undertones hinted at a brewing storm. With a measured breath, Emily rose and followed him. The door clicked shut behind them, creating an atmosphere that felt claustrophobic, a stark contrast to the openness she craved. "I've had a chance to review your draft," Eric began, fingers drumming against the table. "Some interesting ideas, though I'm not sold on their practicality. Especially the execution part." She met his gaze with focused determination, aware that this moment could either strengthen her budding authority or drown her in self-doubt. "I think it's critical to engage our audience deeply. The risk lies not in the execution, but in inaction. If we don't evolve, we fade away." He leaned back, scrutinizing her. "You articulate your thoughts well, Emily," he said, his voice measured. "But can you handle the responsibility of leading this initiative? That's a lot of weight for an intern, don't you think?" His condescension dripped like venom, but she refused to shrink under it. "I think I've demonstrated my capabilities in the last meeting and with this proposal. I understand what's at stake, and I'm aware that every decision carries consequences, but I'm willing to embrace that challenge." An unsettling silence lingered. Eric's expression shifted slightly, surprise flitting across his features. It was the first crack in his armor that she had seen. Could he actually begin to see her as more than just a fleeting face? "Interesting perspective," he said finally, though his skepticism remained. "If you can show results, then we might revisit this conversation from a different angle." Emily nodded, acknowledging his conditional acceptance. "That's all I need, an opportunity to prove that this strategy can work." As she left his office, a tide of adrenaline washed over her. Had she navigated that confrontation well? Urgency pulsed through her veins. She needed to execute her plan with precision. Mia caught her eye as she passed. Emily raised an eyebrow, and Mia grinned knowingly. "You didn't let him rattle you, huh?" "Not this time," Emily replied with newfound assertiveness that gave her voice an edge. She was starting to understand the battle of bullying and control Eric wielded, and for the first time, she felt ready to fight back. A surge of ambition crackled within her, a realization that she might just be on the verge of transforming not only her career but her entire identity. Was she about to discover capabilities she hadn't yet begun to tap into? The potential within her felt almost limitless. As she sat back at her desk, a sense of purpose transcended her earlier doubts. But the quest was far from over. With Eric still in play, Emily braced herself for the next round of challenges. How could she decisively turn the tide in her favor and secure her place? The day unfolded before her like a canvas waiting for bold strokes, and she felt on the brink of something monumental. As she began to revise her proposal, the question lodged in her mind: what would be the climatic move she would make next? Would it lead to a deeper clash, or pave the way for uncharted professional territories? Emily plunged into her work, fueled not just by the adrenaline of the confrontation with Eric but by an awakening within her. Each keystroke felt like a testament to her resolve, a battle cry declaring her readiness to reshape the narrative around her. She meticulously revised her proposal, breathing life into the numbers and adding robust illustrations of how engagement might burgeon under her guidance. In the midst of her revisions, she felt a pair of eyes watch her. Thomas leaned against the doorframe, a supportive smile on his face, and Emily instinctively felt the tension in her shoulders ease. She motioned for him to enter, her heart racing with the possibility of candid conversation. "Look at you," he said, his tone almost teasing. "You've turned from wallflower to warrior in record time. How did it go with Eric?" With a slight nod, Emily shared the highlights of the conversation. Instead of revealing her worries, she chose to focus on her triumphs, the moments where she had stood her ground, where she had articulated her vision without faltering. As she spoke, she realized she had not just gained Thomas's respect, she felt it bloom within herself. "Emily, there is something different about you," Thomas replied thoughtfully. "You're not just playing the role anymore, you're stepping into it. And it suits you." His words settled deep within her, stirring a self-awareness she had long buried beneath layers of doubt. Yet the warmth from his encouragement shifted to a flicker of anxiety. Was she fooling herself into thinking she could achieve anything on her own? "Do you really think I can handle this?" she asked, vulnerability piercing through the confident facade she had crafted with great care. "Absolutely. Don't let Eric's doubts cloud your vision," Thomas cautioned. "He's threatened by your ideas, and instead of backing down, he's testing you. Just remember, this is your moment to redefine what it means to lead." As he left, his words echoed in Emily's mind, challenging her to confront her self-imposed limitations. By the time she returned to her work, the room felt electrified with possibility. The clock ticked steadily towards noon, and with it came a realization: she had to act swiftly and decisively. With fresh vigor, Emily reached out to colleagues in related departments, curious about their thoughts on her proposal. Her inquiry was met with enthusiasm, a contrast to the muted responses she had often received. For the first time, she sensed collaborative potential instead of isolated ambition. Each conversation built her confidence, clarified her strategy, and honed her objectives. But as the day wore on, she felt the weight of Eric's scrutiny looming larger. He was the gatekeeper to her aspirations, and the idea that he was watching her every move lit a fire of determination deep within. Fueled by this urgency, she gathered her enhanced proposal and prepared for a decisive move. Emily logged onto the company's project management software to set up a meeting, each slide she prepared fueling her belief in the narrative she was crafting. Sitting at her desk, the proposal unfurling before her like a story waiting to be told, she felt ready to present her ideas with the confidence of a seasoned professional rather than an uncertain intern. But the mutterings of doubt crept back into her mind. Was this too ambitious? Would Eric truly support her initiative this time, or was he still convinced of her inadequacies? She wrestled with her thoughts, feeling the pulse of exhilaration at the challenge ahead. With each minute that passed, she realized the decision lay with her: to forge ahead into uncharted waters or retreat into safety. Her heart raced as she advised her trembling hand to click schedule meeting. The moment her email was sent, her pulse quickened with anxiety and anticipation. No turning back now. She had taken the first bold step beyond Eric's shadow. As the clock ticked towards the hour of her impending meeting, Emily wondered what detailed critique awaited her, and how would she rise to meet it. The crossroads of her journey loomed closer. Was she prepared to encounter not just the expectations of her colleagues but the entirety of her own potential? The meeting room felt like a stage, and Emily was both the star and her harshest critic. As she entered, her heart pounded against her chest, a rhythmic reminder of the risk she had taken. The sight of her peers gathered around the sleek conference table sent a rush of adrenaline through her veins. They regarded her with casual interest, their expressions inscrutable. In that moment, she wasn't merely presenting a proposal, she was unveiling the future she envisioned for herself and the team. Taking her place at the front, Emily drew a steadying breath, grounding herself. She had rehearsed this pitch more times than she could count. But a nervous tremor danced in her hands, betraying her internal battle. She could see Eric at the far end, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, his eyes sharp and calculating. He was a lion ready to pounce, and yet her resolve began to settle like armor around her. "Thank you all for joining me," she began, channeling her earlier confidence. The words flowed with newfound assurance, and she noticed murmurs of interest in the room. With each slide she clicked through, she felt a pulse of energy igniting within her. The visuals she had painstakingly crafted were no longer just data points, they became the embodiment of her vision, clear, dynamic, vital. As she spoke, she caught Eric's gaze briefly, and a flicker of recognition passed between them. It was that moment she realized, he recognized her growth. The thought both empowered and unnerved her. Then she shifted her focus back to her colleagues, her voice growing stronger with each point. But halfway through, Eric leaned forward, his gaze intensifying. "Emily, while your data is compelling, I'm curious. How do you plan to sustain this proposed engagement long-term? What strategies do you have in place?" The question landed hard, as if a spotlight had suddenly turned onto her. A moment of silence stretched, and she felt the weight of their anticipation. Here was the test, the direct confrontation she had anticipated yet dreaded. "Thank you for that question," she said, buoyed by a surge of adrenaline. "Sustainability comes from continuous innovation and adaptability. I propose regular feedback loops with stakeholders to ensure that our approaches evolve alongside audience expectations." As she articulated her thoughts, she discovered a clarity she hadn't realized was there. The deeper she delved into her strategies, the more passionate she became. The anxiety that once loomed began to evaporate, replaced by a sense of purpose. She was not merely defending her idea, she was demonstrating her capability to lead. Emily ended the presentation with a confident flourish, inviting questions and engaging with the feedback. The discussion that followed was rich and charged. Colleagues chimed in with insights and suggestions, and she gracefully navigated through their inquiries, reinforcing her vision while adapting her plans based on their contributions. Having wrested control of the dialogue from Eric, she finally felt empowered, not just because she was leading a meeting, but because she was inadvertently reshaping her own narrative in real time. With every question she addressed, she gained ownership of her development, moving from uncertainty to assertion. As the session drew to a close, Emily caught Eric's eye once more. His expression was unreadable. Yet she held on to the glimmer of newfound confidence blossoming within her. Leaving the meeting felt triumphant, a litmus test for all she had worked for. For the first time, her ambition no longer seemed like a distant dream, it was tangible, within reach. But as she sat at her desk later, shadowed by the echo of the meeting, doubt crept in again. Had she truly quashed his skepticism? Would he pivot against her newfound strength, using it against her in ways she hadn't foreseen? She was now on the radar, and with that visibility came risk. Emily glanced at her notes, mapping out her next steps, determination flaring with each line she read. She needed to pay attention to Eric and anticipate his moves. As she prepared for the next stages of her project, she sensed the shifting dynamics in the office. She could almost feel the tremors of coming conflict beneath the surface, where her ambitions clashed with an adversary whose true extent she had yet to measure. The challenge ahead was not just about executing a strategy but about confronting Eric once again, in a new arena where their motivations collided with powerful potential consequences. It was time to strategize, not just for success. She had to prepare for war. What would be her next bold move? The afternoon light filtered through the blinds, casting slanted shadows across Emily's desk as she pored over the latest analytics report. The numbers swirled together, demanding her attention like the murmurs from her coworkers outside her office. Anxiety simmered beneath her surface. She had made strides, but now those strides felt perilous, and the stakes had risen dramatically. The ethos of the office had shifted. Conversations buzzed with a new focus, and informal exchanges turned into discussions charged with implications. Rumors circled about upcoming evaluations and new project initiatives, heightening her awareness of the precarious ground she now stood upon. Eric's lingering presence loomed in her mind, an unyielding reminder she couldn't ignore. She felt it was essential to reclaim control not just over her work but over her perception among her colleagues. Her successful presentation had propelled her into the limelight, but how long before the narrative soured? It was time to act. Determined, she began drafting a plan to further establish her vision in the company. Not just a series of fleeting ideas but a full-fledged initiative that encompassed training sessions for team collaboration. She envisioned workshops that would engage her peers, actively promoting the sustainable engagement she had championed. This would not only highlight her leadership but also subtly eclipse Eric's challenges. Sitting at her desk felt less like a refuge and more like a battlefield where every keystroke was an affirmation of her resolve. As she outlined her proposal, excitement began to replace lingering self-doubt. The potential impact of her program was invigorating. She could solidify her reputation as a resourceful leader not just in theory, but in practice. She envisioned how her colleagues would respond, not mere recipients of information, but participants in creating an innovative environment where everyone could grow. As her plan took shape, she found herself momentarily distracted by a knock on her door. It was Lisa, her closest ally. "Hey, I just wanted to see how you were holding up after that meeting," Lisa said, leaning against the doorframe, her eyes reflecting genuine concern. "I'm good, just plotting my next steps," Emily replied, a smile breaking through her focus. Sharing her plans would elevate her ideas, and inviting Lisa into her strategy felt like reinforcing a solid foundation against potential scrutiny. "I think you're onto something," Lisa said, stepping inside and glancing at Emily's notes. "A collaborative training initiative could rally the team and help us align on all fronts." The words resonated deep within Emily. It was one thing to have an idea, it was another to have someone see its potential. Her confidence surged, and she quickly enlisted Lisa's help, outlining roles and logistics. As they hashed out the details together, laughter punctuated their conversation with newfound energy. Brainstorms led to creative brainstorming sessions where Emily's vision morphed into actionable strategies. But lingering concerns peppered Emily's thoughts. While she cheered this collaborative spirit, she pondered Eric's potential reaction further. Would he dismiss her as ineffectual, or would he see her initiatives as a challenge to his authority? She might have a plan in place, but Eric was not a passive adversary. He thrived in the shadows, slipping through gaps her calculated approaches had yet to reveal. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a meeting request for the next day, an all-staff presentation led by Eric. The urgency in her chest quickened. She felt it was a tactical maneuver, a way to position himself amidst the rising tension. Emily's heart raced. This wasn't just another meeting, it was the stage where he could undermine what she'd been building. It was time to prepare for battle. The stakes were rising and so was her determination. What strategy could she devise to not only defend her vision but showcase her emerging authority amidst Eric's looming influence? The time had come to confront him directly. And she needed to be ready. With her eye on the precipice of this new challenge, a thought crystallized in her mind: the moment of truth was approaching. As the morning sun crept through the office windows, it illuminated the quiet tension brewing within Emily's heart. She had just stepped into the conference room, a stark contrast to her sanctuary of desks and offices, where familiar faces morphed into rivals under the glare of fluorescent lights. Eric had the floor, and the energy in the room was palpable, charged with expectation and the subtle undercurrent of competition. Emily took a deep breath, her mind racing through the multiple scenarios of how the meeting might unfold. Would Eric unmask her efforts, or would he acknowledge the potential she had cultivated? No amount of rehearsal could ease the anxiety swirling inside her. She felt exposed, a stark determination battling against the raw fear that threatened to hold her back. As Eric began his presentation, she felt every word cascade over her, a seemingly effortless display of confidence. He spoke with a charisma that drew the room in, detailing his vision for the upcoming projects, almost as if he was positioning himself as the sole architect of success. Yet each point he made felt like an attempt to dim the light she had just begun to shine. What struck her most was the stark difference between their approaches. He relied on authority while she sought collaboration. Emily shifted in her seat, channeling that frustration into resolve. This was her crucial opportunity. She could not let her idea be subsumed by his overarching narrative. She had to integrate her initiative into the conversation seamlessly. Her workshop visions needed to take root. As the presentation progressed, Emily took notes, but the urge to interject swelled within her. It wasn't merely that Eric's approach risked overshadowing her ideas, it was the hunger to assert herself, to step out as a leader not just in vision but in action. Finally, as he posed a question to the room for feedback, lightning struck. She raised her hand. "Actually, Eric," Emily began, her voice unexpectedly firm, catching herself off guard. "I'd like to propose a collaborative training initiative that could align with your vision. It's designed to harness the team's diverse strengths and enhance engagement across projects. I believe it could amplify the goals you're outlining." The room held its breath, heads turning toward her. She could feel the weight of their gazes, mixed with curiosity and skepticism. Eric's eyes narrowed, not quite the open-minded warmth she hoped for. "Training initiatives can sometimes divert focus, don't you think?" He countered, a thin smile tracing his lips. The challenge was clear, and Emily realized this wasn't just about getting approval. This was her moment to confront his dismissal. "Not if they're strategically crafted to fit within the overarching framework," she replied, choosing her words carefully. "We can integrate skills that could drive our projects further. It's about bringing everyone together rather than separating their strengths." Silence followed. She felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with uncertainty. Yet, in her gut, she knew confronting Eric was necessary, not just as a professional tactic, but as a declaration of her commitment to the team's collective success. "Perhaps we can explore that idea further," Eric conceded, though his tone suggested he may not fully back her yet. Emily's heart raced, but she refused to let fear tether her down. The exchange had ignited the room's energy, shifting from passive observation to active deliberation. Colleagues began to whisper among themselves, and a few even nodded in support as her proposal sparked engagement. Even if Eric wouldn't fully embrace her direction, the seed had been planted. Emily felt emboldened, a new facet of her leadership unfolding. She could play this game, and she was beginning to see her own potential clarity amidst the chaos. When the meeting ended, Lisa beamed at her. "You did it, Emily. You stood your ground." Yet the reality of the battle wasn't over. Eric was rearranging himself, recalibrating. There were other meetings ahead, each an opportunity for him to undermine. Or to collaborate. Rushing back to her office, Emily replayed the meeting's challenges and victories, already strategizing her follow-up communication, planning how to maintain momentum on her initiative. As she closed her laptop, it was evident the fight for her space in the narrative had only just begun. She sat in the silence of her office, allowing anticipation and resolve to build. The real challenge loomed as she anticipated Eric's response to her initiative, a response that could redefine their professional clash. How could she prepare for an escalation if he chose to see her as a strategic threat rather than an ally? Determined to map out her next move, Emily knew she had to brace herself for what was likely to come next, a confrontation that might shake the very foundation of her growing influence. The afternoon sunlight had shifted, casting elongated shadows across Emily's office as she reviewed her notes. The lingering buzz of the meeting replayed in her mind, a complex mix of exhilaration and trepidation. She had ventured into uncharted territory, engaging with Eric in a way she had previously only imagined. But what came next remained uncertain. Eric's reaction could either ignite her initiative or extinguish it before it truly took off. As she prepared her follow-up email to the team, Emily allowed herself a moment to reflect. What had shifted within her? The boldness she'd displayed in the conference room wasn't just a one-off, it was the crystallization of her ambitions. She realized she'd been trapped in a narrative of passivity, waiting for acknowledgement that may never come. In asserting herself, she had stepped into a role she had long evaded, the role of the proactive leader. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She chose her words carefully, ensuring they conveyed both enthusiasm and clarity about her proposal. Emily reminded herself that this was not merely an effort to push her agenda, it was about fostering an environment where collaboration yielded greater results for everyone. With each line she typed, her resolve strengthened. Sending the email felt liberating, yet the weight of anticipation lingered. What if Eric dismissed it outright? What if he retaliated? These thoughts gnawed at her, but she forced herself to push through the anxiety. Her journey demanded perseverance, and she would not shrink back now. Later that day, the office felt charged with an energy that mirrored her own. Colleagues approached her, buoyed by the conversation from the meeting. Lisa, her closest supporter, chimed in with excitement. "You've opened up a dialogue, Em. People are excited about the potential." "I've heard murmurs of support already." Emily felt a surge of gratitude. The backing of her peers was crucial. It meant that her idea was already taking root beyond her own efforts. This newfound validation provided her with the boost she needed, solidifying her belief that others shared not just her vision but her desire for a more inclusive environment. But the suspicion still loomed: what was Eric's next play? Would he attempt to undermine the momentum she'd gained? The office environment began to feel charged with the tension of anticipation, as if everyone were holding their breath, waiting to see who would emerge victorious in this power struggle. The next day brought an unexpected email from Eric. "Let us meet to discuss your training initiative," it read, brisk and to the point. Emily's heart raced. Had she underestimated him? Was he conceding, or was this a strategic maneuver to contain her proposal within his grasp? Preparing for the meeting felt like gearing up for a skirmish. She prioritized outlining her vision, bolstering her arguments with data and success stories from similar initiatives. Each point served to remind herself of her capabilities and the necessity of her approach. This wasn't simply about defending her proposal, it was an opportunity to expand her influence, to demonstrate her readiness to lead. As she stood outside the meeting room, she felt the weight of her breathing, the rapid rhythm echoing her racing thoughts. The air seemed charged, laden with anticipation. Emily straightened her back and resolved to remain focused, ready to navigate whatever Eric would throw her way. With a steady breath, she entered the room, armed with her insights and a determination she hadn't fully embraced until now. This confrontation, the essence of her evolution, could very well redefine the dynamics she had long accepted as unchangeable. Would she seize the day, or would she falter under the weight of the challenge? The stakes were higher now, and the outcome uncertain. But there was one thing Emily knew for sure: she was no longer merely a player in someone else's game. She was determined to write her own narrative, even if it meant facing Eric head-on. The moment of truth awaited. Emily stepped into the meeting room with an unwavering resolve. Eric was already seated, his demeanor a calculated blend of arrogance and skepticism. The stakes were high, and she could feel the tension crackle in the air. Today, she would set the tone not just for her proposal but for her entire professional trajectory. "Thanks for agreeing to meet, Eric," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I'm excited to discuss my training initiative in detail and how it can complement the vision you laid out during the last presentation." Eric leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Let us dive in, then. But I hope you understand the need to justify this as a worthwhile investment for the firm." She felt a rush of adrenaline, his dismissive tone only fueled her determination. "Absolutely. I've assembled data that shows how similar initiatives have boosted team productivity and morale at other firms." As she laid out her research, she noticed subtle shifts in Eric's expression, slight widening of his eyes as she highlighted the potential benefits. "More than metrics, what I propose is a shift in company culture where everyone feels equipped and valued. This isn't about sidelining your vision, it's about enhancing it through collaboration," she emphasized, finding her voice within her assertions. Her argument resonated. For the first time, Eric appeared genuinely curious, albeit guarded. He peppered her with questions, though the edge in his tone had dulled. With each response, she felt the power dynamic shift subtly in her favor. No longer merely defending her concept, she was actively engaging him in a real dialogue. Okay, Emily. Let us say I'm inclined to support this. What's your plan for implementation? He challenged, but this time, it felt like an invitation rather than an attack. Emily had rehearsed this. The training can kick off with a pilot program within your team. Together, we can craft workshops that address specific skills aligned with our project goals. Feedback loops can keep us on track. She presented her flow chart, illustrating a clear timeline of deliverables and expected outcomes. Impressive, he admitted, a hint of admiration creeping into his voice. But this one runs smoothly without buy-in from the rest of the team. Will they support you? Her response was immediate and confident. I believe they already do. I've gathered a few informal discussions, and there seems to be palpable excitement around this initiative. I'd like to present this at the next team meeting, where we can gauge their feedback and foster ownership in the process. As the meeting progressed, Emily sensed a shift within herself, a solid confidence growing with each exchange. She was no longer just an ambitious intern, she was establishing her competence and asserting her position as a leader. Eric's questions transformed from skeptical barbs to constructive inquiries, as if he sought validation for her views, acknowledging her as a peer instead of a subordinate. At the meeting's conclusion, Eric leaned back, pensively evaluating her ideas. I believe there's merit here. Let us see how your proposal resonates with the team. If they express genuine interest, I'll endorse it. The words ignited a surge of triumph within her. She had not only defended her position but had also begun crafting a professional identity rooted in competence and self-assuredness. She felt a tangible shift in how she viewed herself in this dynamic, no longer overshadowed by doubts but fueled by determination. As she walked out, head held high and heart racing, her colleagues greeted her with nods and smiles that signaled their support. It was clear the atmosphere in the office had changed and that others were ready to join her movement. Emily glanced at her phone. A message from Lisa blinked on the screen. Heard about the meeting. So proud of you. Standing at her desk, she realized that this was not just a victory over Eric, but a personal triumph that reflected her evolution. She had proven to herself what she was capable of achieving outside the constraints that had once held her back. Emily looked around the office and felt a warmth spread through her. Her aspirations were taking shape into a concrete reality. The journey ahead promised to be challenging, but she was ready. With the echoes of her earlier self-doubt fading, she acknowledged she had taken a significant step towards defining her professional self. The horizon glimmered with countless possibilities. What felt like a distant dream now lay before her, a testament to her growth and determination. In that essential moment, Emily understood the most vital achievement of all. She had built confidence not just from acknowledgement by others, but from an unshakable belief in her own capabilities. And as she set to work on the next phases of her initiative, an exhilarating realization settled in her heart. She was in control of her narrative, and this was only the beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.